We are going to move from a resilience to a natural brilliant state.
We're all here to move our Black communities forward.
We think our children have to have the best. It's all about discipline.
How are we going to discipline ourselves so that we're able to save, so that we're able to make good financial decisions?
Recognizing that there's a road ahead if you manage the road in front of you.
The decisions that you're going to be making today in your lives where it comes to money will affect you in the future.
Discipline is one of the things that we often learn, sometimes by our environment, or sometimes we're forced to do it, and sometimes we don't learn it at all.
Stores want to get us in and out and get our money, and that's it. It's a game, so you have to be really wise to the game.
Do you know what it costs to run your home on a monthly basis?
Land acknowledgement. As we gather together, we acknowledge the sacred land on which we reside. It has been a site of human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. The territory was the subject of Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, this gathering place is still the home of many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community on this territory. We are also mindful of broken covenants and the need to strive to make right with all our relations. Last but certainly not least, we acknowledge the people of African descent who were brought here against their own will or in search of a safe place to live their lives and raise their children. Reconnaissance des terres. En nous rassemblant, nous reconnaissons la terre sacrée sur laquelle nous résidons. C'est un site d'activité humaine depuis 15 000 ans. Cette terre est le territoire des Premières Nations Huron-Wendat et Petun, les Scéniques et plus récemment les Mississaugas de la rivière Crédit. Le territoire était sujet de l'alliance de la ceinture Wampum plat avec cuillère, un accord entre la Confédération Iroquois et Confédération des Ojibwe et des nations alliées à partager et à prendre soin pacifiquement pour les ressources autour des Grands Lacs. Aujourd'hui, ce lieu de rassemblement est toujours le foyer de nombreux peuples autochtones de toute l'île de la Tortue et nous sommes reconnaissants d'avoir la possibilité de travailler dans la communauté sur ce territoire. Nous sommes également conscients des alliances brisées et de la nécessité de nous efforcer de guérir toutes nos relations. Dernier point, mais non le moindre, nous remercions les personnes d'ascendance africaine qui ont été amenées ici contre leur volonté ou à la recherche d'un endroit sûr où vivre leur vie et élever leurs enfants.
This webinar provides illustrative information with respect to the subject matter covered and does not represent an official opinion or position of the Black Business and Professional Association. The BBPA makes no representations, warranties, or guarantees as to assume no responsibility for the content or application of the material contained herein, and especially disclaim all liability for any damages arising out of the use or reference to or lines on such material.
Wake up, everybody. There's no more sleeping in bed. It is a beautiful Saturday morning, and we are back here again on Community Space. As we always say, tell a friend to tell a friend right now. It's not too late to join us here on the financial literacy program that speaks the language of the community. My name is Roderick Brereton, and again, please do tell your friends and family to join us here on Community Space. It is another morning. We've got an amazing guest this morning. But before we get to our guest, I wanted to start with, there is no time like the present. The time is now. We used to say back in the day, there's no time to wait, debate, or procrastinate. You've got to get it right now before it's too late. And procrastination in our community is one of the biggest crimes that we commit when we don't do it now, or when we don't do it in a timely fashion. So many dreams, so many possibilities have been lost with procrastination. And the recipe for getting over procrastination is definitely having a schedule, having a regiment, and having some continuity in terms of what you have to do. So the theme of the day is get it right now. So there it comes down to your financial, your financial health, getting it in terms of making sure that you're doing everything that you need to do to stay on top of your bills, to stay on top of your responsibilities. And also within our family lives, we have to definitely set a precedent for our young people in terms of getting it right away, in terms of not waiting or debating or procrastination. So get it right now. Good morning, Michael Pinnock. I see you're joining us this morning from Edmonton, Alberta. How are you this morning, sir? Oh, yeah, we can't hear you though.
Volume.
Oh, there you
No,
go.
I was muted because I'm all the way in Edmonton.
Okay.
Want to silence me, my membership director, but no, it's all good. I am so happy to be here. It's just minutes after 8.
All
in
right.
Edmonton, and I know I'm getting a direct feel for folks who are out of Ontario when we have this stuff, because it's quite early. We came in last evening, went to bed 3 o'clock Ontario time, and I have to be up now at 8 to be on this chat. But it's all good. It's all good.
Absolutely,
Thanks.
100%. And let's tell people why you're out there in Edmonton.
Well, we are out here to spread the gospel, the good news of what we're trying to do in the Black space, specifically as it relates to beads, to increase the awareness, to build the participation on 2 levels. First, from people applying to us for resources to enhance, scale up, sustain, grow their business. And secondly, to have service providers in the local area, in the local region, to provide those services to those folks who need it. And in addition, we'll be doing all the other programs that we have, you know, the skill set program, the boss woman, and we're gonna meet with some of the folks that we only see virtually. You know, we have got at least 8 persons in this part of the world who has applied to the BATES program, and we're working with them now, so we get an opportunity to be in person.
Okay, and for those people who don't know what BATES, that acronym is, could you please explain that?
Thanks again, you're such a consummate host. It's the Business Advisory Implementation Development Services. It's the first letter of each word we put as an acronym. And what it's designed to do is to meet small and mid-sized businesses wherever they're at, discuss with them what resources they may need to just sustain, as I say, or to grow, or just scale up, and to provide those resources to them at no financial consideration to the businesses. And finally, as I sit here, I can tell you there's 500 applicants in the system right now.
Okay, so it's being very well received from the community right across the country. And we're on a tour. The BBPA is on a tour. So Edmonton is our first stop. We were actually supposed to be in British Columbia, but due to the weather-related events and the challenging times that our BC families having out there, we postponed BC, and we are starting with Edmonton. So where else are we going?
And I would have loved still to go to BC to show the folks that, especially in their times of dire needs, we're there. So we're gonna plan. We're gonna go there pretty soon. I think we're a little scared because it's the state of emergency. I wasn't certain what services may be affected. We didn't want to go there and get stuck in the hotel room.
And you're not saying Jamaica can't swim.
Come on, we can swim. We live in an island and we can swim. But so we start here officially in Alberta, and then we're gonna move on to Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and we're gonna divvy over to Nova Scotia, and then we're gonna come back and go to Nunavut.
None of it. We were going all the way up, all the way north.
And then once we finish this outreach, it's not a tour, it's an outreach where we're going out there to do hands-on, in-person work. So this is the first phase, which is the Western Canada, and then in February we will do Eastern Canada.
Okay.
We want to cover all 10 provinces and 3 territories, at least one of the territories, because Northwest and South is not easy to get to. But the idea is we're a national organization, and it should be reflected not only in our thoughts but our direct links with the various provinces.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, my treasurer. And again, tell a friend to tell a friend. It's not too late to join us right now on Community Space. So our guest for today is a dynamic person. I've known this person now probably for, wow, like maybe almost 35 years.
Yes,
and,
sir.
He's known in the community, in the streets and within the boardrooms as the financial fighter. He helps fight your debt. He helps control that debt that we all may have at some point in time and have a plan with it. He's also known in terms of his mortgages and the work that he does within the insurance industry. And he, number one and foremost, is a very caring, empathetic person. So I'm gonna let him get into all the details of who he is. But ladies and gentlemen, please, with a warm welcome and a handout, please welcome the financial fighter himself, Ian Webster. Good morning, Ian Webster. How are you today?
Good morning, Roderick. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction.
You're welcome, my brother. How are you this morning?
I'm real good. I'm happy to be, once again working with the BBPA. It's an honor.
Absolutely. So I started today off on a note of procrastination, right? Yes. And I think our community, just by some of the historical aspects that we have, and just being so busy and just having to just take care of so many things, procrastination is one of the things that has, I don't want to say it been a generational curse, but it has been within our community disproportionately. I'll use that cautiously, right? How do you think people can start to work on getting things done and making sure that we're on top of the ball and procrastination isn't going to hold us back? What are some of the things you think?
Yeah, you bring up a very good topic. Me, myself, personally, I suffer from procrastination as well. And, one of the tools that I use to help my procrastination is pre-planning. Sitting down, it's very common for me, the night before, for me to pre-plan what my day or my week is going to look like. Very, very important to try and get that organization in my mind and, write it down as to the steps that I have to take to be able to be efficient and I'm not going to say you can never procrastinate, but definitely bring it down to a minimization.
Absolutely. And I think just, writing things down and getting into a routine that we're intentionally looking to break the cycles of procrastination, it's imminent and it's important in that without getting our things done, we put it off, and sometimes we never get it done. Right. So I think in terms of the businesses that we're endeavoring to be in, and also just life in general, and setting a precedent for our young people, especially, it's important that we consider procrastination and do everything that we can to battle it, and then to make sure that it doesn't become an ongoing cycle within future generations.
Yes, sir. Right.
And for those people in the chat, if you've got any good recipes or any good formulas for getting over procrastination, let us know in the chat, because today's the day. We got to get it done now. So no time to wait, debate, or procrastinate. A second from right now is too late. So let's get it underway. So Ian, you've got a great presentation for us.
Yes, sir. Yes. So we're gonna go into finances, a lot of debt. We're going to go into a lot of debt. So let me just, once again, summarize what it is that I do as a financial advisor. Typically the people who come to me are people that I'm helping to eliminate their frustrating debt, credit cards, loans, lines of credit. It's very easy to get those things, very hard to get rid of them if you're not managing your debt correctly. How do you minimize the taxes that we pay as Canadians? We're taxed on everything that we do, income, anytime we buy things. How do you get some of those taxes that you've paid out back into your pocket? So we look for ways to reduce those taxes and get them back into your pocket. The next thing would be investments. I do help people to invest. And when I say invest, I'm not just talking stocks and bonds or even cryptocurrency. A lot of the investing that I do is tangible. It's within real estate. It's something that people understand, and they're not going to roll over around in their bed at night thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing? It's not a high risk vehicle. And the last two things would be insurance, like life insurance. And then mortgages, as you did mention, helping clients to, ensure that they get mortgages for their homes.
Okay. So before you get into your presentation, another quick question. What did you learn as a child about financial literacy in your home? Where did this come from? How did you get into this? But again, what was your initial introduction to financial literacy as a child?
Yeah, as a child, for myself, I just remember my parents always saying, save for a rainy day, save for a rainy day. And it always, finances for me was always, it didn't come with, I don't think it came with a lot of positivity. When I was, it was more so, bad things are going to happen, and you need to have money put aside for those bad things when they happen, right? Which is not bad, but that was mostly of my financial training when I was growing up. And the other part of it was, at the time, was tithing or giving, very, my especially my mom was very big on charitable giving.
Right. Okay. So, all right. So it's always good to know, where some of our ethics and our values have come from. So, and tying it back to our parents or our ancestors, it's always a great place to start. All right. So let's get into this presentation, my brother.
Yeah. So let's go to the next slide. And we'll go to the next one.
That's you?
That's me. So as I was saying, we want to, one of the things that we want to do when we're looking at finances is we want to look at our debt. We want to look at the credit cards, the lines. Oh, we're going really quick here. Okay. We want to look at the credit cards, the lines of credit, any personal loans, auto loans, and OSAP. OSAP is one of the biggest contributors to people not being able to move forward with finances because they have such a large balance of their OSAP. And a lot of times they're only paying interest, or they're not paying at all. And, this can be a loan that follows people, and it can have a detrimental effect on their credit when you have a lot of these loans and these credit cards out there.
Right. And for those people who are not in Ontario, what is OSAP, my brother?
Oh, yeah. So OSAP is a loan that we get from the government here in Canada to help us.
Or even in Ontario. Or
Ontario, yeah. I should say Ontario, yeah. Yes, to help us with our education.
So student loans.
Yes, student loans. You got it.
Right.
You got it. Auto loans are massive. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so as you can see, credit cards, you know, a lot of times we love credit cards. We love using credit cards. And, you know, it's something where we can use and we don't have to pay it back right away. We have, you know, several days to pay it back. But this is where a lot of times people fall down because they use that credit without having money to pay off that credit. Your credit card should only be used, or the best way that you should be using your credit card is using it and then paying it off within 30 days. When you don't pay off your credit card within 30 days, this is when the credit card companies will charge you interest. And we're not just talking, you know, a small amount of interest. We're talking 21% in terms of interest. So let me break that down for you. So if you spend $1 and you don't pay off that credit card within 30 days, you now can add 21 cents to that dollar. Does that make sense what I'm stating?
Absolutely.
Yes. Let's go to the next slide.
So a quick question on that credit card debt then. So that 21 cents after, if you don't pay it off in 2 months or whatnot, so it still continues to compound, and that 21 cents now after the second month becomes 42 cents and so on and so on. So ultimately, if you're not paying off that credit card, the interest can become more than the actual money that was spent.
You know what, Rod? That's phenomenal that you brought that up. I'm going to give you a quick little story. I got my first credit card, I think illegally at 15, with Eaton's. If you remember the store Eaton's, it was a store here in Canada. Anyways, long story short, it was a $500 limit. I got the credit card. I knew nothing about credit cards. I just knew that I had this card. I had a $500 limit. And, you know, me and a basketball friend of mine, we went and we spent that whole $500 within, I think, 48 hours. Anyways, long story short, I wasn't making payments on it. I was 15. I was immature, and that credit followed me till I was 21. So from 15 to 21, it was a $500 limit. By the time I was 21 and I actually did pay it off, it was at $3,000 because of the interest that was growing on it. And, you know, I was very immature and I just didn't deal with paying off that balance in a proper amount of time.
And you know, you can't ask your Bajan father for money to pay a credit card.
That was terrible, because when bill collectors were calling, I was going to hide and yeah, my parents. Oh yeah, it's terrible.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So definitely the lesson here is that 30-day limit. If you're going to use that credit card to build your credit, and I know you'll probably speak about building that credit, but in terms of it's not necessarily procrastinating, but having the ability to pay that off within that 30-day limit, it's crucial. And
you know what, you bring up a good point, because there is some procrastination when it comes to bad spending habits and paying off those credit cards, right? You know, when we're looking at those credit cards, you know, it's very, very, very common that many people with credit cards have bad spending habits. They're spending things on their credit card that are what we call non-discretionary, meaning that they're buying food on their credit card. You're not making any money with food. They're buying phones. They're buying clothes on credit cards. You know, this typically is not what credit cards really should be used for, especially when you're not paying it off within those 30 days. and now you've gone to, let's say, McDonald's. You're not paying off your meal, and now you're having to pay extra for that meal. It typically doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next slide. Are there any questions in the chat so far? Just to let everyone know that, if you have any questions, this is interactive. They can ask questions along as we go along.
No questions right yet, but and we do encourage people to come on and actually turn on their cameras so let us see your beautiful faces. And if you do have a question for the financial fighter, just put up that virtual hand and we'll have you on live. Okay, so somebody actually did ask a question now. Is it 30 days or 21 days in regards to paying off that credit?
Yeah, I rounded it off 30, but it's typically the 21 days. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also the benefits of a credit card and how should they use it if it's only supposed to be technically used for I guess purchases that you may not have the money for, but you can pay it back later. How should they best use that credit card?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to use your credit card is always paying off your balance within the 30 days. You're not going to run into issues in terms of having credit problems. You're going to pay off your balance. The credit card company is not going to be able to charge you interest. You need to just pay off that balance within the 30 days or the 21 days.
Right. So do you think as a part of the, I guess, marketing ploys and strategies that credit card companies have, that they want you to have that interest, obviously, so that they can
that's how they
make their money.
Right.
Right.
Right. But we have to be much smarter and evolve as a society and know that, yes, the credit card can be very good, but it can be very dangerous. It's like a gun. A gun can be dangerous, but it can be very good, right? So, with the credit card, the biggest thing with the credit card is make that payment and pay it off within the month. You will never run into any problems or issues if you do.
And for young people who are starting off, it's the first credit card. Is there a limit that you would recommend that they start with just to get comfortable with it and to understand the power of the credit card?
Rod, great question. Yeah, I always say that you want to start off with a small limit, $500 or under, and just get used to using the credit card and paying it off within the allotted amount of time. And worst case scenario, if you run into financial difficulties, the balance is much more smaller where it's not going to run you into financial disaster.
Okay.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the credit cards, it's very good. It's that it allows you to make a payment in the future, but because it's in the future, that's where a lot of people fall down, because it's in the future and they're going, longer than 30 days to pay off that balance. They're going 45, 60 days. Sometimes longer than that to pay off their balance, or they're just carrying a balance forever.
Okay.
With really no idea of when will I be able to pay off this credit card and where am I going to be able to get the money to pay off the credit card.
Okay. Somebody also asked, can you use that credit card as debt leverage using a balance transfer?
Oh, well said. Who's that person? That's a very smart question. I love that question. Typically, that's what you should be using your card for, is leverage, meaning that you should be using that credit card to buy something that can make you money. So you use the credit card, you buy something that makes you money, and that's where the leverage comes in. Even if you were carrying a balance on that credit card, hopefully whatever you're making outside of that credit card, it's much more than the interest that you're paying on the credit card.
Absolutely.
Right.
And one more question. Are there apps that you would recommend to ensure people pay on time? Like, what are some of those things?
No. They just have to, they have to get it in their mind, pay off that credit card within the month.
Questions are coming in right now, brother. This seems it is a definite hot topic. So
Yeah,
is it
yeah,
bad?
no.
Is it bad to use to take cash from that credit card?
I mean, if you need the cash, if it's an emergency where you need the cash, no, I would say it's not bad. But if you're just getting the cash because you're like, hey, I need $50 and it's not going anywhere, yeah, then that's bad because they're going to charge you interest on that $50, right? Any type of cash advance automatically gets charged interest.
And is it the same rate of interest, or is it actually a higher rate?
Well, it depends on the credit card. Sometimes it can be a higher interest rate, and they will also charge a fee, right? So it's very common that you could have like a $25 fee for getting cash.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
So news you could use, folks. Definitely take it into consideration when we're using these credit cards.
Yes. Let's go to the next slide, Rod. Or Victoria. Yeah, so I think for a lot of people, they understand how credit works, right? The credit card is an account, and it gives you a certain amount of limit that you can use. It's very important when you have that credit card, whatever limit they give you, not to go over the limit. Very, very important, because that will affect your credit negatively. It's revolving, which means that as you pay it off, you can use it again, right? You have up to the, I keep on saying the 30 days, but you have up to about a month to ensure that you're making payments on it. And if you can't make payments on it, the credit card is good, because then you can make installments on it. But again, I would always err on the side of try not to make installments on it and just try to pay it off as fast as possible within the 30 days. Let's go to the next slide, Rod.
So, another quick question, Ian.
Sure.
So, on every credit card statement, when you get in the mail or on your email, it gives you that minimum balance the minimum payment that you should be making. What if you just stick with that and make those minimum payments?
Oh, good. Well, if you stick with that and make those minimum payments, it's probably good. Those minimum payments are typically based on you paying off the card within 3 years. So if you want to take 3 years to make those minimum payments and pay them off, I mean, that's something you can do. But again, that's just debt over your head for the next 3 years. And it's an obstacle or a hurdle that drastically makes it hard for us to move forward financially.
Okay, so the interest obviously continues to compound, even if you're making that minimum payment, and you're pretty much back to square one at the beginning of the next month.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Let's go to the next slide.
And Ian, before you move to the next slide.
Yes, Michael.
What I found is that a lot of times the minimum payment just covers the interest charge with a couple of bucks. So that
period. You know what? That's another great point you bring up, Michael. Let me just speak about that for a moment. So typically when you do get your statement and they give you that minimum payment, the way they do the minimum payments is exactly what Michael said, is that it's going to interest typically interest only, meaning that your balance is still there. You're only paying the interest. Right?
So at the beginning of the month, you're going back to square one, technically.
Exactly. This is where they allow you to pay it in installments, but again, you're going back to square one, right?
And sorry, Ian, and that is why, even though you gave them that 3-year kind of out-year payment, if they're not careful, it goes longer, because all they're doing is paying just the interest, and then around about 18 months, the credit card folks change the interest rate because they're not writing down the principal. So you may end up in an indefinite cycle. The credit card won't allow you to do that, but you have to pay more than the minimum payment. That is what I would recommend, more than the minimum payments.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely. Good advice, Mike.
And one last question here, Ian. So somebody's asked, is it better to pay off the credit card in just one payment or within the month, or can it happen within 2 payments? Does it matter?
If you're paying it off within the month, you can pay it as many times as you want. It doesn't matter. The main focus is to pay off the whole balance, whatever you've used within that month.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Roderick. Sorry, Roderick. Just one last thing because we're on the interest payment in. Because there's an upside to, especially paying off your balance. If you pay your balances within that grace period it gives you, you never pay interest.
Correct.
When it goes beyond the grace period, you end up paying interest.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
So applying for credit is quite easy. They make applying for credit very, very easy. First of all, you got to be 18 years of age, right? You got to supply your date of birth, your social insurance number. You have to let them know where you're working, what you do at your work, how much you make, and where you live. And typically approval is within minutes. Now, when they're checking or they're trying to approve you for credit, this is all history towards your credit. Let's go to the next slide, Rod or Victoria. Right. So, once you've gotten that credit card, it allows you now a lot more purchasing power. It's, I don't think really anyone writes checks anymore, but it was there to replace checks. The good thing about the credit card is that you do have the ability to pay installments, in the event that, you can't pay off that balance within the month. Having credit cards, it actually increases your credit worthiness, because when lenders are looking at your credit history, they're looking to see if you have other accounts and how you manage those accounts in the past. Credit cards are really good for emergencies in the event that, you don't have that cash available to you. You can earn a lot of rewards with credit cards. There's no need to carry cash with credit cards, and you're building, as I said, credit history. However, those are some of the good things. Again, when you have more purchasing power, you're now tempted to spend more. Sometimes you're spending more than you have. Very important to make sure that you're managing that credit card very well. It reduces your income in the future. So if you're carrying a balance, you're going to have to pay off that balance with income that you're getting on a bi-weekly, monthly, whatever the case is. You're having to use that income to pay off your card. I find that a lot of people, a lot of times, don't understand the terms to their credit card. I'll give you a quick scenario with that. I had a client and they had a positive balance on their credit card. They had like a $6 positive balance on their credit card. Do you know that the credit card company charged them for A, having a positive balance, not using that money, and B, they hadn't used their credit card for 6 months and they charged them a fee for inactiveness. Very important to when you have your credit card, to look at the terms, because these are terms that is in the fine print, and this is how the credit card companies make money, with fees. The interest rate, can be high. Your interest rate with credit cards is typically anywhere from 18 to as much as 26%. A lot of people don't know that there's credit cards out there that you can actually get for like 10% annual interest, which is still somewhat high but it's much better than 21 or 26%.
How do you go about that, Ian? How do you get those lower interest?
You just ask you just go in and you ask your whatever bank you're with. You ask them for their low interest credit card. Every institution has them.
Okay.
And when I say institution, I'm talking more of the big five banks like TD, Canada Trust, Bank of Montreal, RBC, Scotiabank. Who am I missing? I'm missing someone in there. Bank of Montreal.
Yeah.
National
Bank. Yeah.
It's very important when you have your credit card, not to misuse it, because it will affect your credit. It'll affect your credit to the point where no one is going to want to lend you money. You'll have derogatory credit. It won't allow you to do things like rent a car, things of that nature. You have to have good credit to rent, to buy anything. Very, very important that we're not misusing that credit card. I
think that's a very big point there. So in terms of how that misuse of that credit card, so if you're not paying on time, for instance, or if you miss a payment, does that impact your credit score from that credit card misuse?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, that definitely will affect your credit score. If you miss a payment, so when they send you your statement after 30 days, if you miss a payment, that goes against you. The more payments you miss, it's all going to be reflected on your credit history. Consider your credit history like a report card.
Right. And on that credit history, so when it comes to, as you talked about, renting a home or buying a home, does that impact you're about to talk about that right now. So there we go.
Yeah.
It's incidentally to Ian, some folks don't realize that it's not so much the amount that you pay on the credit card, but the timing. Because you may have a balance and they say you should pay $10 on the 15th, but you consistently pay $20 on the 16th. And that is used against you as well, because you keep missing the 15th and paying it on the 16th. So it's
correct, Michael.
Late payment every single month, even though you double the payment.
Correct, Michael. Correct. And it definitely does go against you, because yes, it will show up on your credit history or your report card. It will definitely show up on your report card, on your credit score.
So I think that could be one of the reasons that if you're not paying attention to that date that Michael just mentioned, where it's due, even if you are paying that credit, you could still end up with quote unquote bad credit, right? And I think that's one of the things that our community has to be cognizant about in terms of just seeing those dates and knowing that they're there for a reason, and having obviously an understanding of what that impact will be, not could be, will be, should be incentive for us to keep a good credit score, and also be able to apply for, homes and everything else that you'll have to have a good credit score for in the future. Because, I know disproportionately so many people who say they've got bad credit, and, they'll start, talking about, when they had the credit card and whatnot, and how their credit, and some of these people are still within their, early 30s, right? Or, in their late 20s, and they've already got bad credit. So, understanding these details that the financial fighter is speaking about right now, and Michael are mentioning, are critical. And for us, obviously, in terms of that intergenerational wealth and understanding how we're going to move ourselves, our community forward in this world where credit it's pretty much everything. And in a lot of senses, it's imperative that we understand these things.
Yeah, Rod, it's very, 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 very critical. When I'm speaking about these things, I'm not just speaking about these things from a professional standpoint, but I'm also speaking about these things from personal experience. Me having to, find out about finances, really on my own, because this wasn't taught in school. And, even for my parents, they didn't have a good understanding of finances. So for me, it was a lot of trial and error. So I have had derogatory credit. I do know what it is to miss payments. I do know what it is for bill collectors to be calling you. I do know what it is to have, derogatory credit and having to fix that and do things to ensure that my credit is much better. So yeah, so this is experience.
Okay. And Ian and Rod, if I was to make a recommendation, I know some probably later in the presentation, Ian is going to talk about the elements that affect your credit. But in our space, I know two things that we're challenged with a lot is the constant believing that the minimum payment is all we need to do. There is a big belief that as long as you pay the minimum payment, you're good. And also there is as Rod mentioned earlier, you have to look at the due date, because by missing that due date, even by a day, then your history show that you're a late payer, which goes against your credit all the time. So it's not just the minimum payment, but also the due date. Always pay before or no later than the due date.
Correct. Yes, Michael. Correct. Let's go to the next slide. Are there some questions in the chat?
Yeah, I've got another question right now. So it says, people are living off their credit cards these days due to COVID-19 and the restrictions within the government. What, if anything, are credit card companies doing to help in this pandemic?
Zero.
Since forgiveness of a portion of the debt or anything else?
Yeah, unfortunately, you know what? Zero. The lending institutions are not doing anything. They're not, because of COVID. There's nothing that is being done. In the event, if you do run into problems with your credit, what I would suggest is to be proactive and to give those lenders a call ahead of time so they're not calling you, and devise a plan with them. But the lenders themselves are not doing anything for COVID. I want to make that clear. There's nothing that's being done for COVID. They're expecting you, when they give you the credit, they're expecting you to manage that credit like there was no COVID.
Incidentally to Ian, one of the current experience to support your position is they have now invoked the 6 months. What is it they use? If you miss a payment or something, or a late payment twice in 6 months, and you were on a lower interest rate, they revert you to the higher interest rate.
Yes.
They said earlier that you could go to them and just say,
you're right.
listen.
You're correct. Yes.
So that's what's happening in COVID now, that not only are they not helping out, but they're invoking some of these clauses that was hidden and they didn't use in a long, long time.
Yes. Yes, you got it.
So you may see your payments going up, but you need to check whatever. If your regular payment was, say, $10 a month, and all of a sudden you see 18 or 20, you need to look at your card to see why. Because they may have gone ahead and changed the interest rate.
Right. Michael, you bring up a very good point. As you know, in regards to the first question, the initial question, you'll find that lenders will tell you, if you transfer your balance, we won't charge you any interest for, let's say, 30 days, as Michael was saying. But they typically do know that you're not going to be able to pay off that balance within the 30 days. You transfer it, and now you're at a much higher interest rate, to Michael's point. All right, let's go.
What about applying for a line of credit and
Yes.
I'm having that like a Visa line of credit. So you have that actual, you still have the Visa capability, but that line of credit, which is usually at a lower interest rate. Is that an
Yeah.
option for people to
It's a
look
very
at?
good option.
Okay.
It's a very good option. A line of credit. Typically, when people have line of credits on their accounts, it's a good thing. Not everyone can get approved for a line of credit. When you get approved for a line of credit, that means that you're credit worthy. That's very good.
Okay.
Let's take a look at how the credit score is made up, because I think this is going to be very important for people to understand moving forward. So when they're coming up with your credit score, there's a few things that they take into consideration. The first is your payment history. They want to know, how have you made your payments in the past? Have you made them on time? Have you missed payments? Have you missed 1, 2, 3? How many payments have you missed? So payment history is very, very important. If you're to make a payment, I think Michael was speaking about this. If you're to make a payment on the 15th, make that payment on the 15th and not the 20th or not the 16th. Make it by the 15th. Very, very important. Utilization is also important. So what utilization means, if you have a limit of $1 and you're always at your limit of $1, it's not a good look if you're carrying that balance all the time, right? Utilization, they want to know, yes, you know what, we gave you a limit of $1, but they don't want to see that you're always maxed out on your credit card. Am I making sense with that?
Absolutely.
It's kind of like a catch-22, because they've given you this limit, but at the same point, they don't want to see that you're always at that limit. Okay? Credit history, very, 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 very important, right? Your credit history gives you a score. Typically, your score works from anywhere from 350, which is very bad, to 850, which is very good. I've never really seen anyone at 350, but typically derogatory credit is going to be, what people consider derogatory credit is anything under 600 credit score. If you have anything under 600, it's going to be very hard for you to get credit anywhere.
Okay.
Your delinquency history is very important. Hopefully you don't have delinquency history, but if you are delinquent in paying, it's going to show up on your credit score, and you want to make sure that you have that to a minimum. Again, if you've been delinquent in the past and lenders are looking at this delinquency, why would they ever give you credit if you've been delinquent in the past? It just doesn't make sense. They're not going to want to do that. And the last thing, which is very, very important, is inquiries. The more inquiries that you have on your credit, the worse it is. So to give you an example, a good amount of inquiries that you should have in your credit on a yearly basis is about 6. Anything more than that goes against you. So the more times you go to look for credit, the worse it is. Very, very important to know that when you're to try and keep your inquiries to a minimum, because it shows on your history any time that you've applied for any type of credit. Am I making sense there?
Yes, sir.
So payment history, utilization, credit history, delinquency, and inquiries are all part and parcel to your credit score. Let's go to the next slide, unless there's any questions.
Yep, the questions are coming in, my brother.
Okay.
So due date versus statement date. Is there something in terms of the credit bureau that they look at or differentiating between the two?
Well, so statement date is when they actually ran the statement. Due date is the date that you have to make your payment by. There's two different dates. So due date is not the same as statement date. Am I making sense?
Yep.
Okay, good. What's the next question?
And requesting with the credit card company, like for instance, if you know on the 15th, if that's the due date, that you don't get paid until the 21st, hypothetically, right?
Yeah.
If you could request a different date, like the 30th, just to ensure that you're able to make those payments. Is that something possible?
Unfortunately, so with credit cards, no. With loans, yes.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
Okay. And the last question here right now. So do you get penalized for having an inactive credit card or line of credit?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, you know, in my scenario earlier with my client that I was telling you, when they had a $6 positive balance on their credit card, and but they hadn't used their credit card for 6 months, they got charged an inactive fee. Yes. Right. And that's where I go back to, you have to know the terms and conditions of that credit card. A lot of people don't look at the terms and conditions of their credit card. Very, very important, because this is where hidden fees are.
Okay. And there's actually one more question, Ian. So some people will put a surplus of money on that credit card. So for instance, if their credit card if their credit card limit is $500, they may put $750 on it. So they have that, $250 surplus. Is that a bad idea, or is there any?
Great idea. I actually use that in my own business right now with prepaid cards. I'll put a positive balance on it and use it that way. However, again, you got to go back to the terms and conditions, because there's some lenders who don't allow that, and they'll actually charge you for that.
Okay. And one more question, actually. Credit is a hot topic, my brother.
Yeah, so, it always is. This is one of the biggest hurdles in our community from not allowing us to move forward financially. It's the biggest hurdle. Credit, derogatory credit, bad credit is the biggest hurdle hurting us in our community right now. Okay. When it comes to finances. Okay, so is it better to let the credit card increase the limit in the sense that they always have a max on their credit card? So, credit cards will say, hey, we'll increase your limit to 5,000, even though it might have been, 4,000. Great thing. I always tell my clients, get credit when you don't need it, number one. Number two, if they are increasing your limit, take it. That means that you're credit worthy. That's a good thing. That's a way of them saying, hey, you know what, Rod? We like dealing with you. We like dealing with you so much that we're going to give you more credit because we trust you. Yes. Right. So actually, we have a question from the room from Amani. Good afternoon. Actually, good morning, Amani.
Good morning. Good morning. Good stuff, Mr. Webster. Good presentation. I know that some of our community members, they just don't know that you can check your credit score right on your phone, and it is soft check, and it doesn't affect your credit because it's a soft check. Right now, I can go on my smartphone, log into my bank, and check my credit score, which will tell me all the things you just mentioned, the payment history. I will see the percentage. I will see the credit history. Right now, I know if I qualify for anything or not. But many people do not know that they can do that. Yeah, Amani, thank you very much. You bring up a very good topic. Yes. So I was talking about inquiries before and how it can affect your credit score. However, if you're personally doing the inquiries on your own, it will not affect your credit score. To what Amani was saying as well, there's ways that you should be checking your credit score
Definitely on a quarterly basis, like every 4 months, you should check your credit score. Every 4 to every 6 months. There's a company called Credit Karma, www.creditkarma.ca. That's one place where you can go and check your credit for free, no charge. There's another place called Equifax, www.equifax.ca. And they're the biggest credit bureau in Canada. And you can also check your credit through them. And the last one would be www.transunioncanada.com.
Okay. So
But
get
to
those
Amani's
down.
point, these are all places where you can go and check your credit at any point in time. Thanks for that question, Amani. Yes. Okay. So some mistakes to stay away from, and I think we mentioned some of this before. I see there's some more questions coming in, Rod. I'll just go through this slide and we can answer some of those questions. So making minimum payments, again, if you have to do that, you have to do that. But again, I would say stay away from making minimum payments and pay off the balance. Don't make your credit, don't make payments on your credit cards late. It's going to go against you. Don't ignore your billing statement. Withdrawing cash on your credit card is going to add interest right away. Right? Try it. If you need cash, don't take it from your credit card. It's taking cash from your credit card is no different than taking a loan from your credit card. Applying for many credit cards at the same time, as I told you, a lot of inquiries, it will hurt. One of the things that people do that hurts is closing your credit card. If you've been giving a credit card, try and keep that credit card open and manage it properly. Do not close it. When you close your credit card, it takes away from the history of that credit card, and it hurts you as the individual. Try and not close credit cards out of anger, meaning, I don't like this company, or I don't like how they're treating me, or I don't like what they're saying. Try and keep, if you've gotten a credit card, keep that credit card. As I said before, you have to know the terms of your credit card. Very, very important. Your credit card is not free money. I will repeat that again. Your credit card is not free money. And you have to ensure that you control any type of overspending or impulse buying. Very, very important. Questions?
Can I add something here? Not mistakes to stay away from, but the need for credit cards. Because a lot of time we talk about credit cards, we focus, especially in our space, on the negative impact. But there's a lot of stuff you're doing now that you must have a credit card to do it. There's a lot of online purchases and all that sort of stuff. If you don't have a credit card, you can't access those commercial e-commerce stuff. So you need to have a credit card. And as I say, it's not free money, I must repeat. All these other stuff you need to manage, but everyone somewhere along the line in modern time will need a credit card.
Yes. Yeah. Michael, you bring up a very good point. I mean, you need a credit card nowadays just to get, a phone. You need a credit card, when you need a credit card, if you're renting a place, there's so many things that you need a credit card for. And it's very important that, to Michael's point, that, we manage that properly.
A lot of purchases outside of just having a credit card for building credit and so on. But there's a lot of stuff that you purchase now. A lot of the e-commerce activity is not through debit cards. A lot of the e-commerce is through credit cards, So you as somebody in the modern space will need a credit card just for commerce.
Yes.
And I think now more than ever, Michael, you're absolutely right. With the different food apps and obviously the delivery apps and everything else that we have right now, they're all tied into that credit card. Even when you're on your phone, you can pay with your phone, but again, it's attached to your credit card. So it's something that obviously will be even more entrenched in our lives than ever before in this life that we live. But understanding, again, the good ethics and the good practices with credit cards is going to be imperative for our survival, literally. Right?
It's part of the systematic way of doing things. And we in the Black space, through a Black lens, we're more exposed to these stuff. And as Ian has been pointing out, if we don't manage these mistakes, we are forced to use credit card, and then we're paying back far more money because we're not managing the repayment of the cards. Okay. And you're forced to use it. If you don't have a card, you can't do anything. So when you have a card, and as I said, it's part of it's the way businesses run now. You see, we're out of checks. Yeah. But the flip side to that, if you do something with the government, if you get a major grant that they're managing, they want to see checks front and back, So I'm just saying that the system is so structured. They have to work with what they have. And therefore, we have to learn to manage it much better, or else we end up paying interest on top of interest on top of interest all the time.
Yeah. So there's a question here, actually, Michael, that I would say is more aligned for yourself to answer. So as a Black business owner, if you don't have good credit, are you entitled to apply for the different loans like FACE and whatnot? If you don't have it?
Oh, definitely. In fact, when FACE was going through our design phase, the concept of credit played a big role, because we know in the traditional banks, they call it the beacon score, and that was used against us because we always have derogatory creditors, ANC. But in the FACE process, we talk more about character. So we still look at credit, but we talk more about character. Yes, this guy started out like he and back with his $500. He was immature, he was just young. And he thought it was free money. He could just pay the minimum. And then, after 3 years, he ended up paying $1,500, the bulkated interest. Now that is, messes credit. But when you come to FACE, we take you through that mentorship coaching. And we do understand where someone like Ian is coming from with his bad credit, but we know his character is not bad credit, and therefore we don't use that against him. I think the percentage is very low in terms of credit history.
Bad credit, but not bad mind.
Not bad mind. Just bad credit as to how you manage your financial life. But we know it is not indicative of the individual. So character is what they use in FACE more than credit per se.
Okay. Question here for Ian. So how many credit cards should a person have?
There's as many as they want. As the more the better, because it just shows that, once again, that the lenders trust you and you're credit worthy.
Okay. And how do you properly close a credit card account?
You typically send in a letter to the credit card company, letting them know that you'd like to close the account.
Okay. And that letter is definitely imperative to do that. I know when I've had a credit card in the past, it was a high interest credit card, and I finally paid it off. I was instructed to send that letter, and I didn't. And obviously it's the actual, the fees, the annual fees or whatever that was, continue to, compound, even though I was using a credit card. So yeah, you definitely have to send that letter or email or whatever that may look like to the credit card companies. Yes, how can you protect yourself from, the hacking and the credit card theft that's happening, obviously, very often in these days and times?
That's one of the reasons why you should be checking your credit history anywhere from every 4 to 6 months to see what's going on in your credit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one last question. I think this is more so for Michael. For a 17-year-old who wants to start a business and does not qualify for a credit card yet, can loans from the FACE and BAIDS and whatnot, are they accessible for these services and supports?
Well, I can't speak to FACE. I'm incidental to FACE, so I can't speak to their own credit management and loans management process. But we in BAIDS, we would look at the business venture and together with an understanding as to its worthiness, its ability to make profits, etc., etc. And on that basis, mutually we'll decide whether we support it or not.
Okay. Ian, back to you.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide, Rod. Yeah, I think this is the last slide, for the day is, who's helping? I think it's very important for people to rely on professionals, coaches, and have them help them get through their financial any financial issues that they may be having. And when I say a professional, I'm not talking just like mom or pop or uncle or aunt. I'm talking like a real professional that can actually sit them down and help them.
So how do you repair that bad credit, Ian? How do you repair if you've got derogatory credit? How do you get back in terms of being, I guess, or repairing that credit score and being in good standing when it comes to credit? How do we do that?
Yeah. Well, you don't want to procrastinate with that. You definitely want to plan for that. How I typically help my clients with that is that I definitely put them on a budget. So you need to be put on a budget where the focus is debt elimination. And typically it's over several months that we're doing that to ensure that we're putting them in a much better place, not only with the amount of debt that they have, but also with their credit history.
Okay. So at this point in time, we're going to open up the floor, even though the questions have been coming in. Please do bring your questions for the financial fighter who will help knock out your debt and get you to win that round when it comes to your credit and everything else that surrounds it. So some people are asking or saying, actually, great presentation, excellent presentation. It is definitely needed. And they're asking about when you're going to be doing your seminar on investing. Well, I guess we'll get back to that one very shortly.
Right.
Yes. So more questions for Ian Webster, the financial fighter, in terms of credit.
And while you're waiting on the question, Roderick, I just want to remind the participants here that we are actually like starting a cycle again, because we have had Ian before talking about credits. We have talked some about stock exchange, investing, and so on. So yes, I see it in the chat. Folks are asking for that, and we will also do that again. We'll certainly bring Ian again to do the same credit one, because it's this hour and a half is not long enough to go through it, Ian. So we'll probably have you back, I don't know, next week to just have a continuing stuff, and then I can put some challenge questions on coming out of the credit. So I'm not certain the organizers, Victoria, but we could probably ask you to come back next week to just open it up for more questions and so on, because I can tell you, hour and a half is not long enough. You can deep dive. You can deep dive in some items that you just gloss over. For example, the statement date and the due date. We as professionals, and I am very pleased that you mentioned a professional is not necessarily your mother or your father, unless they're a professional in their own right. We talk about folks who have been through the academics, have been through the experience, have been through the practical delivery of these things. Because as much as I'm in the space, I still go to professionals when I need to do deep dive on certain things, but there's so many little nuances that can trip you up. So you could probably come back next week and deep dive in the due dates and the statement date, because that mess up a lot of folks. You actually get a grace period between when you spend the money, there's no interest until you get your statement. And there is still no interest until you miss that due date. So if you manage your credit properly, you can have credit running for 2 months before you have to pay a cent, and you do not have to pay interest. But you have to be trained and coached by someone like Ian to look out for those things. You use a credit card today and you have about 60 days before you're really exposed to interest. The due date, and then, no, the statement date, and then the due date. But guess what? If you miss that by 1 minute, the interest kicking right away.
Correct.
So there's a question here, Ian. If somebody pays the line of credit or has a line of credit and pays that late, is it the penalty the same as the high interest credit card, or is it the interest that's would just be within that line of credit? Is there a penalty?
If they pay, is there a penalty if they pay their line of credit late?
Correct. Is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So it would be just what that interest rate is, obviously.
Correct.
All right.
Well, they have to look at they have to look at the terms and conditions for that line of credit. Typically, it's only going to be that interest rate, but you do have some companies that if you are late making payments on your line of credit, they're going to charge you a fee.
Okay. So we have a question from the actual room, the Zoom room. Leroy, good morning. How are you, sir?
Test 1, 2. Am I being heard?
One loud and clear. You're on the air.
How you doing, Leroy?
Excellent. I'm excellent. I'll share a tip and then I'll ask for a tip. A tip that I have is I take advantage of points and rewards. So, for example, I spend a lot of time in hotels. So per year, I garnish about 20 free nights due to the amount of money I spend with those hotels. So it gives me an opportunity to save money by having those free nights, by taking advantage of the simple rewards that they offer, loyalty programs. And a gentleman, I was sitting beside a man on a train. He was a senior, deep senior. I said, "Hey, you lived a lot longer than me. You know, tell me something I don't know." He said, "The only thing I'm gonna get for free in this country is the points, the rewards." So I learned to take advantage of those. My question is, what credit building hacks can you suggest or give for business?
Say that again. What?
Credit building hacks.
Credit building hacks. What do you mean by credit building hacks? I don't understand that. Sorry.
Like, how do I define the term?
What are some of the things you can do to build your credit? He's saying ACT, credit building activity. I think that's what he's talking about. What are some of the things you can do to build your credit?
Excuse me.
What business?
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Secrets, trade secrets, hacks is like Perka. You have the password.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any. I don't know if there's any trade secrets per se. To be honest with you, I mean, you want to use your credit card. You want to continue to use your credit card anytime. I think it's good that you're using your credit card and you're getting points. That's very good to be able to take advantage of points. The only thing I would state is that you just want to make sure that you're paying off your credit card within the time allotted, within the grace period that they've given you. Outside of that, I wouldn't say that there's any hacks that you can be doing, outside of the points that you would get from the cards.
I would add to it though, Ian, is a mental state. Credit is exactly what it says. It is credit. You should actually know where the source of the funds coming from before you use your credit card. So for example, if you're unemployed right now, using your credit card expose you because there's no funds coming in down the road to make the repayment. So if you know you're going to get paid on Friday, for example, and you're going to get $500 on Friday, you may use your credit card on Monday for a $400 spending, because you know on Friday you'll have $500 to clear that credit card. But if you don't know where the source of funding comes from, when Friday comes, you now have a loan.
Correct.
And it hits a high interest rate because it's a credit card, it's not a loan. And the grace period, I could check it out between when you use your credit card, the statement date and the due date is more than 30 days on average. So you have got that 30 days grace period where you're not exposed to interest. You're exposed to interest on the 31st, a minute in that new date. That is where you're exposed, and it's compounded. It's interest on top of interest.
Yes.
So one of my tips I say to folks is, first of all, if you use a credit card as a credit, which means you know where the source of finance is coming from to clear the balance, and you utilize the statement date and the due date, you don't have to pay any interest. I, for one, don't pay interest because I use a credit card for credit and I make the payments before the due date. So how the credit card people are getting at me now is through annual fees. All of a sudden, there is a clause that Ian mentioned that I didn't read, that if certain things change, an annual fee will kick in. I got it first. No annual fee if you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Now that I'm doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, good. Then I'll say, okay, we're not getting any interest from this guy, so let's bill him an annual fee. So that is where I pay on my credit card, through annual fees, not interest, because I pay in full before the due dates. So that is if you want to call it, that is something I put in. Another one is you can go to your bank, your credit card holder, we have said it before, and ask them for a reduced rate. You can actually do that. I have done it and I got 10% reduction from 19.99 to 9.99.
Wow.
Right.
Same thing.
So it's doable.
Yeah. Ian, another question here. So can a declined transaction affect your credit score?
No.
Thanks for your question, Leroy.
No. Yeah, thanks a lot, Leroy. No, a declined transaction won't affect your credit score.
So another question here. How can you rebuild your credit once you've had really bad credit or filed for bankruptcy?
Oh, great. Again, it goes back to budgeting. Budgeting and getting you on a plan that allows you to repair that credit. So if you have derogatory credit, one of the reasons you may have derogatory credit typically is because you owe a balance. You owe money. You owe money, you need to pay that money back or negotiate to pay that money back. Actually, that's another thing. I'll bring that up. If people are going through financial difficulties and they have a balance on their credit card that they're finding very hard to be able to eliminate, they can go back to the company and speak about reducing the amount of money that they owe to that company. One of the things that I do in my profession, when I'm helping clients, I tell clients, before you go to bankruptcy or consumer proposal, come and see me and let me negotiate with your lenders on amount of money that we can give to them or that you can pay back before you have to go and claim bankruptcy or consumer proposal. Because there's lenders that will try to work with you. I will say they will try to work with you.
Okay.
One of the best success stories that I've had in my career was helping out an individual who had $52,000 of debt. They were looking to claim bankruptcy, and they were at their wits' end. They just didn't have enough money to be able to pay this back. I was able to negotiate with their lenders, and I was able to bring that balance from $52,000 down to $26,000. Wow. That's a savings of $26,000 that they save.
50%.
50%. I mean, it's still a lot. Don't get me wrong, because it was 50, but it's much better than 52, right? Okay. And they were able at that point in time to now focus on getting their credit better.
Okay.
As a plug here, Ian,
Yes.
and Rod, I would say that is why Ian mentioned going to a professional, because banks, just like in the court, judges like to talk to lawyers. So they say don't represent yourself. It's the same thing in the financial world. The breaks, the deals, the negotiations that Ian can have with your bank, you will not have that ability. So it's always good when your back is, or even before your back gets against the wall, but go to a professional like Ian. Talk with them. I've done the same thing for folks who owe the CRA tons of back tax. Just the fact that I've wrote a letter to them ease the pressure. Then we get into a negotiation, and a lot of time they're willing to remove the interest and penalties. And that is where that 50% comes in. And then you get into now who's going to manage the routine repayment, and that is how you build your credit. But it's always, always good to go to a professional. And again, I like to put my black plug in this stuff. That is why at the BBPA, we are building a pool of black professionals that folks can trust. When you go to them, they will do the best for you. And it does work. I have got tons of those good stories, Ian, where folks come and they're about to leave the country. I've had folks who decide they're going to go back home because they can't solve this garnishment to the pay through the government and all that stuff. And you know, the first letter I wrote to the government, he's that stressed, no collectors work. Because you know the government is using collectors now. The CRE actually use collectors to call you now. So some of those folks calling is not really government workers no more. They're headhunters just looking some funds. So we got that stopped first. Then I was able to talk to the government to remove the interest and penalties, and also got them to agree on an installment payment over an extended period of time. And so the person didn't have to go back home. And I think they're now probably 1 year outstanding with that game plan, and they'll be back on target. And then they'll start to build their credits again. So speak to a professional like Ian or other professionals in the chat who have that skill set to help you before you file for bankruptcy and before you do these other stuff that is really not good. You don't want to file for bankruptcy. Anybody that filed for bankruptcy, even though after 7 years, you think people forget, people that don't like to repay the debt is never treated good. So you don't want to file for bankruptcy.
All right. So on that note, we wanted to say thank you very much to the financial fighter. Victoria, if you could please share Ian's contact information. A lot of people are asking for that, and I believe they want to get in contact with Ian. But Michael, before we close for another week, the challenge that we had last week, I know we had pretty much brought it up at the last minute, and I think people didn't get a chance to see what that challenge was in regards to the invoice that we're asking people to submit, but also the difference between a business number and I believe the
corporation number.
Correct. So
two things. First of all, Victoria can put that chat up again, because we did say we're going to extend it to this week. So a lot of folks have applied, have responded to that challenge, but the challenge is going to go until next week, Tuesday as well. So this one was for 2 weeks. And the one prior to that, those folks who were successful in that challenge, the checks will be prepared ASAP and sent out to those winners. Okay. So this chat is for 2 weeks. last week and this week. What's the difference between the corporate number and the CRA business number? And remember, folks, in addition to answering the questions correctly, we also must do the invoice correctly. And the invoice should bear your actual name or business name and actual addresses. This is not a school case we're doing. This is real. If you put John Brown at some other address and you successfully answer the question, the check is going to be mailed to that person at that address. So when you do your invoice, please ensure that it is your current address and the current name that comes on the invoice.
Okay, and if there's any questions, always ask. That is the best way to learn. Ask the question. There's no such thing as a dumb question. And at the BBPA, we definitely will get to every length to answer your questions so that we all can win as a community. There is no loss, there's only lessons. Wanted to say a big what's going on to all of our Prep in a Step participants here on the chat. Great to see you this morning. And just wanted to again thank Ian Webster for all the information that you've imparted on credit and understanding credit and knowing how we have to go about managing our credit to build that intergenerational wealth that is going to be imperative and essential for us to have our community go to that next level. And on that note, we want to say, please do get involved in the challenge, and you could tell a friend to also be a part of this challenge. So take that screenshot and give that information to the treasurer, and you're going to be emailing that to the treasurer at bbpa.org. And I'll put that in the chat for everybody.
What we can do to Ian, I wonder if Victoria can bring up the slide that showed the 7 items that must be on the invoice, just as a reminder. Because one of the things we're trying to do here is to build on our success. So if we did something right a week ago, let's keep doing it right in the future. We did have a session on the 7 elements in the invoice, and every single time you do an invoice, you should include the 7. So Victoria, I don't know if you can pull that slide about 3 weeks ago and just pull up the page. Okay, all right. So let me see if I can find it in mine and post it.
Okay. So I put the email address that you will send that information to, and the BBPA is invested in our community and is giving back to our community. And do take advantage of it, because when opportunity knocks, you've got to answer. And again, to wait, debate, or procrastinate is going to make you too late. So we got to get on that now. Take a good look, face truth. Procrastination is crime. Would have been a life sentence if you do not learn time. So, I'm bringing the rhymes with it today. All right. That's it. Okay, so while we're waiting for Michael to bring up those 7 principles or 7 aspects.
Yeah, well, I'm going to try to go by memory as I search for the 5.
Okay.
The first one is you need to have the vendor, the person who you're going to send the invoice. You need to have their full contact information, name and address. You need also to have your full name and address, contact number. You need to have the HST number there if the person is registered. You can't charge people HST without you display the 9-digit HST number. You need to have an invoice number. Well, you need to have an invoice date. The number is a good accounting stuff for the purpose of tracking, but you must have an invoice date, and you must have a due date when you expect to be paid. It could be on presentation, it could be 14 days, or it could be a specific date. And you need also to explain the description of the goods or services you received, and the extended cost, the total cost, and the taxes on that cost, and then the total. I think those are the 7 things. The information for you and the supplier, that is 2. The HST is 3, the invoice number is 4, the due date is 5, the description and the extension is 6, and separate the tax. You cannot give them an invoice and say inclusive of tax. You must show them that it's $100 the cost and $13 is the tax, and the total is 13. Folks have been missing, and I can tell you in the real world, folks have been missing due dates. When you don't put a due date there, you cannot determine when you'll be paid. The person can use it because you didn't tell them when they want to be paid, and they can do it at their luxury. So you have to put the due date there. And as I say, it can be on presentation. It can be immediately. It can be, say, 30 days net, or it can be a specific date, but you have to let them know. That has been one of the big downs. Oh, thank you very much, Victoria. So we have a great executive producer.
100%.
Yes.
Okay, so please do take a snapshot of that, a screenshot, I should say, of that. And on that note, we will be saying au revoir for another week of Community Space. So don't forget to tell a friend to join us here on Community Space, the financial literacy brought to you by RBC and the Reed Estates and the BBPA every week, 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 11:30. Tell a friend to join us. That the Community Space, the financial literacy program that speaks the language of the community. Thank you very much, Michael Pinnock. Thank you very much, Ian Webster. And stay safe. Take care. Au revoir.
Take care.
Thanks for having us.
Community Spaces, the financial literacy program that speaks and reaches the community. Are we going to be in a better place, or are we going to be still, quote unquote, behind the 8 ball?
Because of the historical disadvantage that our community has, we most times do not have financial role models. Without that, economically and financially speaking, we'll always be at the bottom.
Keep proper books and records, because the data drives the strategy, and the strategy drives the profits.
COVID-19 sort of removed a veil. It's really exposed the structural barriers that our communities face.
These last 2 years, where there's been a heightened emphasis on the well-being of Black people, has influenced the influx of funds and opportunities. The time is now. How long is that window going to be open?
We'll see you next week. And don't forget to tell a friend to join us here on Community Space.